900, apparently, have been dismissed around, I think, since the war, possibly.
Nervous business.
Oh, nervous. See, I tell you, there's only one worse job, being a debt collector in Glasgow.
I'm a professional footballer who plays for money. I'm not ashamed that I've always said that. I've always been open about that. And I can earn a great deal more by playing football outside of Scotland than I could in Scotland. So that's why I play football outside of Scotland. But I'd still like to be player manager of Rangers one day. Or settle for a manager. Talk Wallace, watch out.
2-1 to Celtic is how it ends, and Jock Stein receives the Winners' Cup. Celtic.
The dramatic attractiveness of being a footballer is obvious. Less obvious are the attractions of being a manager. Yet a lot of people have tried to cross over from being a player to being another kind of working-class hero, the football manager. It can be a difficult crossing, covering as it does the distance between personality and character.
And Danny McGrain.
Passing by Everton, and some good defence by Cohn, with Matt Busby stepping in.
And here comes the man that they would have for Prime Minister, President and everything. And Matt Busby going first to Benfica, and what a tremendous thing to do, to go straight to Benfica and now to his own club.
Football is a trade, and I played with number 4 in my back. I was lucky that I found my true position right away.
And those two have met many times before, Emlyn Hughes and Bill Shankly. And except for the most staunch...
Doherty takes a free kick, and it's a goal from 60 yards.
And Tommy Doherty, the manager who one or two people rather cruelly said was the most successful failure in football, has today proved them wrong.
Tim McLean.
If it is possible, I've my eyes on the referee, it's gone, that's it, the finish. United have done it for the first time in their history. And there is a man who totally transformed the face of football in this city. Goes to Matheson. Ferguson's there, it's a goal, Michael. Aberdeen have definitely won the championship. Jock Wallace, the manager of Rangers, with the goal.
In any crowd, a football manager is really alone. In the course of every game, he endures involvement without participation. His career is at the mercy of a bouncing ball and the wayward talents of his team. Unlike the players, he can't convert his tension into energy. He has to find within himself the strength to absorb it.
Waves aside, feels the penalty kicks.
Instructions come from the bench.
The ball is not there. Scotland's World Cup is going to end in rather miserable fashion.
Go on, Malone Diamond!
The pressures of modern football would seem strange to those involved in the quiet beginnings of the game. It started as an amateur sport, very much a gentleman's pastime. But its popularity brought money into the staidness of the picture. Professionalism made the coach and the manager central to the effectiveness of any team. The players found that the money brought with it a greater demand to submit to authority. The power of the managers grew until they often seemed to be running the game not so much for the players or even the fans as for themselves, like a legal mafia. It took a very long time for those who actually played the game to establish their importance in football. By the time the players were achieving star status, a new kind of manager was emerging to control them. Someone who didn't depend on an institution for his authority, but on his own force of character. Perhaps that's why 3 of the greatest of this new breed came from a mining community.
There was nothing else except mines. You're lucky if you got a job. You're lucky if you got a job in the mines. And I think possibly the fact that this was the case gave us it built us to the fact that we had to try and better ourselves, or try and create something, or do something.
Oh, well, it was a background of with 10 of a family, really. 5 boys, 5 girls. And it was in a little mining village, Glenbuck, which most people in Scotland won't even know where it is. It's in the Ayrshire-Lanarkshire borders. And I would say that our upbringing was tough.
Well, I was simple like everyone else, and from my mining family, the next step when you left school was to go into the pits. It was as simple and straightforward as that. My parents were like every other boy's parents were determined that they were going to keep me out the pits, but economically, the only place you could earn money was in the pits. I was 6 months in a carpet factory, but the call of the pits was too great, and I finished up there like all the rest.
I think the experience of people in mining areas tends to peel away a lot of the nonsense that very often attaches itself to the attitudes of other characters in football, and especially managers. I think that in the case of men such as Bill Shankly, Matt Busby and Jock Stein, you have the common sense of the mining communities raised to the level of wisdom. And as Jock constantly said, if you've seen and experienced the sort of hard things that can happen underground, you're not going to be too intimidated by a wee crisis in a football club.
The team's been presented to the King before the start of the England v Scotland international soccer match at Wembley. It was a cold day for it, and Busby and Cullis wasted no time over the toss-up.
There are those who see success and failure in football as being largely a matter of luck, or at least of factors you can't control. The job of the football manager is to disprove that theory. After the war, with his own playing career over, Matt Busby came as manager to the derelict ground of Manchester United. He was determined to rebuild more than a stadium.
I was always a believer in building your own team. And with the result that gradually I had Jimmy Murphy, my assistant manager, and we got together and we started getting boys from school, from college, girls at the right age. And eventually we built a side, and when the 1952 or 53, when the other side had probably gone a little bit over the top, these lads were able to come in. And eventually they become one of the all-time great sides, because of the Duncan Edwards and Tommy Taylor. But they'd won a couple of championships and they were outstanding. A number of great lads who, sadly, in the crash, eventually, the sad crash, we lost them.
Matt Busby's team matured quickly. Though they lost to Aston Villa in the 1957 Cup final, they won the league, which took them into Europe. By 1958, they looked set to go a long way. But football, which enjoys exaggerated words like tragedy and disaster, can sometimes make the words sadly accurate.
I remember us going off in Munich. We arrived down in Munich, and I remember us going on the plane and going along the runway, and the pilot who was in charge wasn't happy, and he turned back. And then we tried again, and the same thing happened. With the result, he asked us all to come out, and we went and had a cup of coffee. And then they come back and said, would we return as the plane was now ready to go and the fault had been corrected. And of course, on we come on the plane, and we got set off and started going, and you have a feeling for a moment there's something wrong. And all of a sudden, just smashed.
On the fringe of a Munich airport lies the wreckage of an airliner, still smouldering from a crash in which 21 people were killed. Tragedy enough at any time. But in that plane were a group of young men who were almost the personal friends of millions. Manchester United, the finest soccer team Britain has produced since the war. And 7 of them died in the crash. 10 others, as well as their famous manager, Matt Busby, were injured. Some so seriously that their lives hung in the balance. Busby's babes, as they were affectionately called, were on their way home from Belgrade when the disaster struck. They were on top of the world. Their 3-goal draw with Yugoslavia's Red Star team had put them through to the European Cup semi-finals. They had high hopes of the English FA Cup. Now those hopes are snuffed out, like the lives of 7 of their finest players.
Matt Busby needed all the strength of character he had acquired in the Lanarkshire coal mines, not only to come back from the edge of death, but to find the determination to start all over again.
Wanted a lot of getting over, and it took a long time to do that. They're an age 21, 22. Sadly, the years ahead of them, and it was cut down with this terrible tragedy. So this meant a terrible thing to get over.
Webster runs in and shoots. Hopkinson can't hold it, but Higgins tips it away.
The team itself recovered more quickly. Manchester United contested the 1958 FA Cup final against Bolton Wanderers. And although they lost 2-0, they had re-established themselves as some kind of force in English football.
You're talking about the father figure of most managers, of all managers, if you like. You know, to survive the Munich disaster was a miracle, and for him to come back from that and be the man he was, and the creation of the Manchester United teams, and the dreams, and the players they've had there, the development of their own young players, the purchase of the players, which means you're a shrewd judge of a player. Matt was a superb, good temperament, allowed players to play, managed with a velvet glove, I think. Was a kind man, generous man, beautiful man. But everybody knew at Old Trafford who was the manager.
Matt had that rare and priceless gift of making people love him. And players, very hard and awkward guys, would be terrified of Matt's disapproval and terrified of letting him down. For instance, you know, you'd often see Pat Crerand, who wasn't really a cringer by nature. You'd see Pat full of apprehensiveness about the possibility that Matt wouldn't be too pleased with him.
Matt was a very, very strong character. And not many people know, but you know Matt Busby, I've never heard Matt Busby swear. He never swore. And you know, you can imagine what like in a football dressing room with 20 or 30 fellas. And sometimes Matt would come along and he might have heard somebody, and he'd walk in and I tell you, the place would be like a cemetery. Nobody would speak, nobody would admit to doing anything like that. That was the strong character he was. He had such a great personality.
Natural authority was important. The aggressiveness and physical intensity that make good players can also make them difficult to handle.
It was really just his own personality. The way that he communicated himself. You couldn't copy it because it came from the heart. He worried about you. He wanted the best from you. He encouraged you.
Players must be absolutely dead tired of what entertainment they've all given. Best to Canelli. To Law.
And he was a very, very tough man. When I say tough man, not physically getting hold of you and say, you will do this, you know, you're not doing that properly or whatever. With his words, he was tough and very strong. And when I went on the field to play, if I was playing particularly badly, I couldn't get him out of my mind. I couldn't get him out of my mind, like thinking, he's not going to be pleased with this, eh? If I wasn't doing well. If I'd played well, I was thought, oh, well, maybe I'll get the nod of approval today.
Charlton. What a goal!
He was in the hearts of the minds of the players. He got into them, which is something that you can't learn. It's some gift that you're actually given.
The gift worked even with George Best, maybe the most lavishly gifted player in the history of British football, but with a temperament inclined to self-destruct.
George Best, he had this tremendous talent, tremendous ability. And he now and again, I used to say, sitting there, Dennis Law was in a good position, Bobby Charlton was in a good position, and George would pick it up and I'd say, give it to Dennis, give it to Bobby, give it to... And he'd go on and he would lose it, and I'd say, oh my God, when is he going to learn some sense? Not in that vocabulary, but 5 minutes after, the same situation would happen, and George would go along and send this fellow the wrong way and that fellow the wrong way and side foot it in the back of the net. And I thought to myself, man, it's time you'll keep your mouth shut.
This with McCready, and McCready's made a cut, and it's a magnificent goal.
It was a great feeling to have these lads around, because they're not only great players, they always give you a great deal of respect too.
Now Fitz. Oh, he's got a big shot! Oh, he must! He has! Get right behind Manchester United, and the Brisbane going to goal! Charlton in the middle, so too is Aston. Charlton, another! He's got another! Bobby Charlton.
When Manchester United beat Benfica to win the European Cup, the euphoria was understandable. Many people felt that a tragic plane crash had made the presentation 10 years overdue. Matt Busby and his players had overcome more than opponents to bring the cup to Manchester.
I think he is Manchester United. I think that's the main contribution, because there was nothing. When you look at the stadium outside there now, there was nothing here in 1945-46. A bombed-out shell, and look at it now.
What he set out for Manchester United to be communicated itself to me, communicated itself to the players, and it's communicated itself to the people that have followed, which is a great tribute, and nobody at this club underestimates what his contribution was to Manchester United. He's in the brickwork.
I don't think I'll ever lose the appetite for it. There is that love for the game, and you want to see the game, and you want to see outstanding players playing, and you want to see the best team win. I feel that I always want to see the team that reveals the talent to be the winners at the end of the day.
So Neil, Best. Oh, yes!
Anyone who couldn't see uncompromising integrity in Bill Shankly's face couldn't see. He had a passionate commitment to the importance of the game and what it meant to its supporters.
And it was in the closing stages. And Matthews was having a birthday that day, you know, as you could do against anybody. And he had beaten one of his opponents on the far side. And I was making a beeline, of course. I was a sweeper up as well, long before they talked about sweepers up. So I was making a beeline for Matthews when, as I got past the faraway post, he hooked it over my head. And Tommy Lawton came in, and he lashed it in the net with his head. And I remember the noise the ball made, swishing against the wet net, you know. And he said, "Get in," you know, and I heard him saying this. And I thought, a lump of cement had fell into my stomach. Yeah. And the net was swishing with noise, you know. Bloody awful it was. Terrible sensation. But a gunner would have shot him.
Bill was a vastly different man from Matt Busby, but they did have quite a lot in common. For a start, Bill was also capable of making players love him and justifying the old corny line about making men willing to die for him. He also had great judgment of the basics of the game. He knew when people could play and when they couldn't play. He had a habit of telling those who couldn't play in fairly dramatic terms. Like, I'm told that after he had bought Tony Aitley for about 90 grand or something like that, he saw him out in the training ground, called him over and said, "Here, big fella," he said, "have you ever seen a ball before?" He just paid a fortune for him, but that didn't prevent Bill from throwing in the hard line.
It was 59, early in the season, October. We're playing at Huddersfield Town, and 2 people came from this club, walked down the slope and asked me if I'd go to Liverpool. It was as blunt as that. And a few months later, it came to pass. That was it.
And it came to pass that a working-class messiah had come to Liverpool.
There was potential here. There was people here with the same kind of fervour as me. So I'm one of the people. I'm just one of the people that stands in the cup. They think the same as I do, and I think the same as they do. So that it was a kind of marriage of people that liked each other.
The marriage was a happy one. Bill Shankly's career at Liverpool demonstrates dramatically the importance the gentleman's game of football came to have for industrial workers. It became a focus of working-class identity in the greyness of industrial society. Liverpool won the league championship in 1964 for the first time since 1947. Along with the title, the manager and his players gave their supporters pride in themselves. It was a pride Bill Shankly shared in.
He was always boasting his own club. You know, he would say, Matt, we played another club, Sheffield Wednesday or somebody, another. By God, they played well. And you say, oh, they're great. And you say, Bill, how did you lads, how did you finish? And he says, oh, we won 5-1.
Natural enthusiasm, that's the whole thing. It's the greatest thing in the world, natural enthusiasm. You're nothing without it.
It's out to Callaghan. Hitting it too far. It's a goal!
The other thing about Shankly, of course, was that nobody ever had a more inspirational effect on footballers. I mean, he believed in the invincibility of Liverpool in particular when he managed them, and he persuaded a lot of his players to share it. He was also a guy who loved drama. A lot of that legendary comment that Bill came out with, a lot of these utterances that have gone into the lore of the game were obviously calculated. I mean, he was brilliant with his spontaneous line, but he had no prejudice against lying in his bed at night thinking up a few.
I think that if a man needs who's playing in front of the public is being well paid, and he doesn't dedicate himself to the job, I would be hard on him. If I could, I'd put him in jail.
He never had a day's illness. He never smoked. He never drank. He once came in. We'd been training, and he used to do all the training himself. He used to do all the five-a-sides. He used to run round with us, and I can see him now. Honest, I can. It brings tears. You can see him now running round with you. He didn't want to appear weak in any way, and he'd be running with you, and he'd be laughing and joking with you. And we've got in at the end of the training, and he's walked in and he says, "You know something, boys? When I die, I want to be the fittest man ever to die."
I deal with everybody as I think fit in my own mind, and whether they like it or whether they don't doesn't make any difference to me. But I think the study of human nature, that's the main thing. I mean, every player that comes here, from the day he steps in here, the minute he steps in here, he's being watched, he's being scrutinized. And then we're reading him like a book. Then in a month's time we may know everything about him, all his weaknesses and all his strengths. So from the day he comes in here, if he thinks there's nobody watching him, he's got a surprise coming to him.
Shanks' army, this Liverpool side, swarming forward now. Hall. Keegan! Goals pay the rent, and Keegan does his share.
Shanks could never, ever handle cheats. I had thousands of grievances with Shanks, but if you came out and faced him with them, then fine. It was over and done with. He said his point of view, you said yours, you did what he said, and it was over and done with. But at least you got it out. At least you got it out and you'd said it, and Shanks respected for you.
Highway, Liverpool showing them party pieces. He wasn't offside, Smith. Yes!
A team that had been forged in the heat of Bill Shankly's nature was always likely to learn the habit of success. Under his managership, Liverpool won 3 league championships and 2 FA Cups. But the same refusal to compromise that had created the team caused him to leave it disappointingly early. In 1974, he resigned in favour of Bob Paisley.
I think he made a mistake in allowing people, provoking people indeed, to the point where they were able to remove him from the game. And I think it was a tragedy for all of us, and I think quite clearly it was a specific tragedy for Bill.
Felt Shankly's presence on the field like an extra player.
When I'm walking up them steps, I was fortunate enough to be captain of the club at the time. I'm walking up them steps to pick the European Cup up. And I'm thinking to myself, we've won it, but Shanks really won it because Shanks made Liverpool a club. He made them a team. He gave the fans something to say, hey, that's my team, that's what I want.
When Jock Stein was playing with Albion Rovers, many people might have thought he was just another player, but he had qualities that would make him utterly outstanding as a manager.
Oh, it's inborn. He's a natural man.
Come on, Frank. Come on, Frank.
He's a natural leader of men, and he's a sensible man. He's a fiery man as well, of course, as you know. But he's got ability, and he's able to convey that ability to other people. You understand?
Don't carry it.
And the respect, because he knows what he's talking about.
Push it a bit, just.
So he's just a natural champion. Like Benny Lynch was, a natural champion. Stein's a natural champion.
Come on, Jim. Come on. Oh, come on.
It's debatable if there's ever was a better man.
Give you a bye.
Oh, yes. I think that... God, it sounded a bit like me, didn't it? Oh, yes. Better not start impersonating him or he might come back and deal with us. But, he was just on his own, wasn't he, the big man? And, I mean, I think those men we've just mentioned were great, great men, and Jock wouldn't want to be called anything other than their equal. But in terms of managing football clubs, I think that he was a repository of all the essential qualities, the hardness, the understanding, the deep perception of the game, but the deep perception of players.
His return to Scotland from the Welsh team Llanelli gave him cup honours with Celtic. It also accidentally prepared the way for what was to be his real contribution to football.
I was fortunate enough. I got a bad ankle injury here, which was possibly the best thing that happened to me. An ankle injury which bothers me even yet. And I was conveniently pushed in to look after the reserve team. Maybe it would just create a job that was created for me, but it turned out good for Celtic and it turned out good for me.
As manager of Dunfermline, he took his club to victory over Celtic in the Scottish Cup final of 1961. After moving to Hibernian, he returned to Celtic Park as manager.
The reason me coming here was at that particular time I had a good offer to go to England. And I discussed it with the chairman of Celtic at the time, and he said out the blue, how would you like to come back? Well, I didn't think it would work, because Celtic had never... I don't think they have ever worked really with a manager having full say. But I was assured that I'd be given full control of the side.
Well, it was totally revolutionary. And I mean in the nice sense, because all of a sudden, football became important. He talked about it. He encouraged people to express themselves, and all of a sudden he gave people belief in themselves. And from being a whole lot of talented individuals, he started to put a unit together that could work for each other and with each other. And obviously within a very, very short time, developed into a real powerful team.
Oh, who's suddenly got his score?
If he's got useful players, and he trains them the right way, and he gets them all to do what they can do, well. If he gets them all to do well, the little things they can do, and he merges them all together, it's a form of socialism, without the politics, of course. And they're all helping each other.
Jock Stein's brand of athletic socialism got every fair-minded observer's vote for the 9 consecutive seasons that Celtic took the Scottish League Championship. The individual flair of his players was harnessed to his own deep understanding of the practicalities of football. When success in Scotland took Celtic into Europe, the enthusiasm of the players went supported by their manager's preparations.
I once watched a match with him in Madrid before Celtic played Atletico Madrid. And it was interesting the way he worked out how teams were going to play. They'd have a blank sheet of paper and he would just go across it where the ball was for 90 minutes. So at the end of 90 minutes, you had this great scrawl, but what you could see out of it was the particular areas in the pitch where the team played and where the ball went, and roughly speaking, who was going to get the ball most. And that was, of course, vital, because if you know, players don't play thinking about it, they play instinctively. So you knew that instinctively, if they were under any sort of pressure, they'd play the ball here or they'd play the ball there, and he could just put people to stop them doing that.
Johnston! It was proving harder to stop Celtic. When they dismantled Dukla Prague in the semi-final of the European Cup in 1967, they were on their way to Lisbon. It began to look as if they might be the first British club team to win the competition. Perhaps that wasn't a possibility too widely welcomed south of the border.
I was the only manager of an English club that was there. None of them took the trouble to go there. I mean, they hadn't seen the Celtic, and I had, of course. Because I remember Jock, I think he'd just come out of the bath, he was sweating as much as the players. And with Hugh McIlvenney, and I said, Jock, you're immortal now.
The real beauty of Jock's career was that he could be a manager of the highest class and of the highest achievement without leaving Scotland, because he made Celtic a world power in football, and that is quite monumental.
Jock himself, the man who led this great team to victory in the European Cup.
It didn't take him long to come down to earth, although the European Cup was safely in Celtic's hands.
And I think that in that box, yes, in that box is the European Cup. We're not going to get a glimpse of it, but we're assured that it's...
His players had become national celebrities, but Jock Stein was determined not to let the adulation go to their heads. He let them enjoy the moment while it lasted, but each of the temporary heroes knew that the manager was always ready to give them a reception that was less than civic.
The first person in was the club doctor, and John Fitzsimmons came in, and Jock said to him, what do you want? And John was very taken aback and looked at me for support, and he wasn't getting any at that particular point, and said, well, I'm interested to see if there are any injuries. And Jock said, injuries? The only injury in here is heart trouble, and I'll soon cure that, so you get out of here. So John went away very offended, and the players sat it in. And Jock got the door shut and started on goalkeeper, right back, like right through the team, you know, giving everybody a piece of his mind. And I'm sitting in the corner, not paying any attention to any of that, got nothing to do with me at all. I was just sitting on the bench when he stopped, and I was suddenly conscious. I don't know if you've ever been in that position. You're staring at the floor, but out of the corner of your eye you can see that somebody's feet are pointed in your direction. And there's only a certain amount of time that you can't look at the person. Eventually, you know, you do look up. And when I looked up at Jock, and he said, as for you, what a player you must be if you can't get your place in this squad, he said.
He seems to do the right things at the right time. And whilst he can tear a strip of you and all, and people think he's maybe lost his head, within that, he hasn't. He knows what he's saying. Yeah.
As mentioned one time, he was at a match at Liverpool, and on the way we'd arranged to meet. And I suggested at the time he should probably, we'd love him to come to Old Trafford. And he said he'd think about it, and eventually I think he was full of it at the time, and then all of a sudden he decided probably he may be better staying in Scotland.
It was while returning to Scotland from holiday that his car was involved in a head-on collision. He recovered, but he had travelled as far as he could with Celtic, and he moved on, first to be briefly manager with Leeds, and then to take over the Scottish team. In the 1982 World Cup in Spain, the healthy pragmatism he had instilled in the Scottish side was eventually overwhelmed by the brilliance of Brazil. He stayed on as team manager, controlling Scotland's attempts to qualify for the 1986 World Cup. To the end of his career, he remained deeply concerned about football, always worth listening to when he spoke about it. The pressures and the fame he had lived with for years never gave him a false perspective on himself or on the sport. His vision of the game was total. He understood it from the training pitch to the terracings. While preparing Scotland for their crucial qualifying match against Wales, he saw his immediate problems in the wider context of what was happening to football.
The biggest thing that wouldn't work for me would be if it was a game that brought a bit of bad behaviour into the crowd, and brought the game again under the microscope of people who are trying to stop the game. Because we've got Prime Ministers and Sports Ministers and other kind of ministers who are all trying to tell us how we should administer the game. They know nothing at all about the game of football, and maybe they don't know so much about the politics as well, but they're trying to run football, and most of them don't go to a football match. If they had their way, they would kill the game at football. And it's only good games at football that we might have tonight that will keep the game alive. Another bad game, another bad scene, another bad time that would give the press good coverage and would give people who want to hit the game a bit would be bad for the game of football, and that's not good.
He had also tried to persuade the Scottish fans that although the game belonged to them, they must give the running of it into the hands of those who realistically understood the problems.
There's an awful lot of people coming to see us and paying an awful lot of money and travelling a long distance. Let's try and give them a result, and that's important.
Jock Stein got the result, but died as it was achieved.
One thing you've got to accept, it was totally committed to football. I mean, he was determined to be a success. I think he was destined to be a success, to be quite frank with you. But football, he lived and breathed football. I often think that he could have had another form of relaxation. Didn't drink, didn't smoke. We tried to get him to drink at different times, but he always resisted that temptation. I honestly feel that it would have provided just a wee bit of a relaxation for him, because he was so intense about football and he was so wrapped up in it. I mean, at the end of the day, I think his whole dedication to the game probably denied him the right of a bit of retirement and a little peace and quiet that I think he was entitled to. He was entitled to enjoy success an awful lot more than he did.
People knew that he was also a vulnerable man, you know, often a tormented man, Jock, and, you know, despite having a marvellous family and having great love around him, he was a man who was alert to the anguish of life. I don't think it was an innocence in terms of being short of street wisdom. It certainly wasn't short of that, but it was a willingness to leave himself in vulnerable places, or to leave himself in places where he was vulnerable. You know, in other words, he didn't believe in insulating himself against what happens out there. And that's why he knew what nearly everybody was up to. You know, as V. Jimmy Johnson said to me once, he said, he's even got spies in the noggin. I thought he meant inside his head. I thought it was a sort of Manchurian Candidate routine. But what he meant was a pub called the Noggin. And Jock said, I don't have spies in the noggin, but I've got a guy across the road who sees the wee man going in sometimes. He said, and then I'll make a phone call. He said, is Jimmy Johnson there? And he said, and the barman will say, yes, Jimmy. Jimmy will come and say, hello. He said, aye, hello. If you don't get your ass out of there. So I think his understanding of wee Jimmy was considerable. Jock once said to me, he said, when I've finished with this game, he said, I think people may be inclined to say that the most remarkable thing I did was to win 9 championships in a row, or to have the first British club team to win the European Cup. He said, but I think the most remarkable thing I've done was to keep that wee man in the game 5 years longer than he might have been. If that is the case, then he did us all a service.
In football, the champagne can go flat very quickly. The cost of the service football managers give us is often measured on their own nerve ends. It takes a special kind of character to live among the headlines, but a sense of humour helps.
In fact, that's when I was at Wolves, you know, someone said to me, why did you take the Wolves job? I said, well, I wasn't feeling very well. I said, and the doctor told me to get as far away from football as I could. So I took the Wolves job. And the hardest job of a football manager is the first year, is when you go to a club, you look at the players' contracts, you look at the dead wood you've got in the staff that you take over, and the first thing you've got to do is get rid of that. And it takes you a year to do that. And unless you get results whilst you're doing that, of course you're out on your ear.
I used to be annoyed about this word pressure, because there was me saying, oh, there's tremendous pressure on me as Rangers manager, where somebody watching that interview on the television at home with a lot of family problems, maybe somebody in the family dying in hospital, or really have the problems that all families have today. And I could visualise at times I'm saying, he's got pressures, he ought to be in here and see the pressures that we're under. That's only a game they're playing.
Over 90 minutes you could be committed to an asylum every Saturday. I mean, without a doubt, they could have wrapped you up in a straitjacket and taken you away, because every decision that was taken against you on the pitch, you really took personally. Because, again, it goes back to total frustration. Because once the players cross that line and out on the pitch, you can scream your head off, but there's nothing you can do about their performance.
When I signed the contract, Tom Hart asked me to sign a 10-year contract, and I signed a 5-year contract, and the press was there and everything. And I said to the press, one thing's for sure, that I'll get the sack from someone, whether it's here or somewhere else. But that's most important. There are times when you have to get the sack, because I'm a type of character that I need to say what I feel. I've always done it, and I'm not going to change. Even if it's millionaires that own places, I don't mind, because they came for me, and they employed me to do what I was capable of doing. Okay, if they don't like it, good night, Vienna.
I remember, funny enough, my wife, I got offered a smashing job in Canada, and there was all sorts of dollars involved in it, and it covered football, it covered a whole lot of other things. And I was toying with it at the time, and I said to Liz, you know, she had said to me, I said, I don't think you'll enjoy it. She says, you'll miss football too much. And I said, well, I don't know about that, Liz. I said, I think I could maybe enjoy not being involved in the traumas and the desperation things, the highs and the lows. And she says, no, I disagree with you entirely. She says, I think that's what you enjoy about football.
But I've had a wee chance now to be out of it for a couple of years, and I realise there's more things to life. There's one thing certain anyway, it's the only life you're going to have. It's not a rehearsal for something else in the future, so you've got to enjoy your life. And although I enjoyed being a manager, I'm really enjoying another part of life now, and while I still admire the guys that's managers, and they're still all my great friends of mine, I sympathise with them a lot of the time, simply because of the pressures that they go through.
Person. McLean gets there first, though. It's Jim McLean. Ferguson fighting well.
Two men who have achieved more success as managers than they did as players are Jim McLean and Alec Ferguson. Dundee United are a far more impressive team than Jim McLean's limited financial resources could lead us reasonably to expect.
Scored! Oh, what a great goal!
The second phase of his career has brought him more acclaim than he enjoyed as a player.
Oh, Kinloch, we shouldn't have done that. Ferguson scores!
Aggressively competitive though he was as a player, Alec Ferguson was to inspire far more goals as a manager than he ever scored himself.
And Ferguson just couldn't turn that one up. Watson, oh, the bar! Scanlon, yes! What a marvellous goal to finish this match.
The best way to assess that would be to speak to someone who played with me. And I think they would find that I was a bad loser then, and I wanted to win things. So, anyway, that the hunger has always been there. As a manager, it's been achieved. You know, there's a difference. And maybe the players would tell you, thank goodness I wasn't playing with them. They maybe wouldn't win anything.
12 minutes of the first half gone. That's a good-looking ball again at Jackson. Hard hit there by Simpson. And there's a floating equaliser ball. Away goes Cooper. Cooper with a great chance. Cooper must make it 4. He does. Oh. That's a good ball. McGee likes his position. It could be there. It is the winner. That will win the cup. Bell with a great goal. Ooh, off the post. I thought it was in. And then it is, yes.
Alec Ferguson's success repeats a familiar theme among players turned managers. Great managers tend to have been good rather than great players. Perhaps their ability to help other people's talent relates to this. Someone who is not spectacularly gifted as a player will have to substitute character for flair and earn his knowledge of the game. That's maybe one of the things that separates the managers from the players.
It has to be a divine line. I mean, I think the divine line is such that you can't be too close to them. It's a difficult thing. I remember once Drew Jarvis saying to me, he says, you're too hard with them. You've got to patter them up and kid them on. Well, I'm not the kidding on type, to be honest with you. You know, I'm a bit more straight to the point. There's nothing wrong with losing your temper. Nothing wrong. At the end of the day, they get plenty of praise. And I think that sometimes it's premeditated, to be honest with you. You know, I think you've got to use all your facilities as a manager. There's times that it's suitable to lose your temper. There's times when it's suitable to be calm. Nonetheless, it does make me unapproachable with them. And there's not a thing I wouldn't do for them. I mean, I love them. But I probably would never say that to them. Because, I mean, I love them, but at times that we've got to realise that you'll be disappointed about players, and there'll be times that the players will be disappointed with the manager. Maybe they feel that they're not being given a, you know, they maybe not agree with a decision I take. But the one important thing about management, you've got to be able to make decisions that are unpopular, but know you're right. That's part of the job, and I think I can do that.
That's Porteous. Wilson, yes. Miller, the captain, has equalised. It squeezed its way in.
Jesus Christ, this Icelandier's gone for your brain!
For a long time, Alec Ferguson has looked like the natural successor to Jock Stein in terms of ability. Now he has become that successor in reality. He takes Scotland to the World Cup finals in Mexico, a responsibility he carries without too much obvious strain.
Hands up, who have got 2 O-levels.
Football's an emotional game. You can't expect to sit in cold water all your life. Now I'm that way. I can't change that. At 43 years of age, I'm still as enthusiastic and passionate as I have been. That'll not change.